Dawson Rider Wiki.
Hey YouTube, Dawson Rider here with my review of Lupinranger vs. Patranger episode 4. This was another good episode. I don't think I found it to be as good as the first three, but not bad. Just I feel like this was the first more status quo episode. Like, the first three episodes felt like an extended pilot in terms of getting us used to everything. I mean, I suppose 3 was the start of sort of status quo stuff with like individual focus and stuff, but this felt like the first one where we're more in the day-to-day operations of the show, and it was a more Pato heavy episode, so that was kind of nice, because, you know, I talked about before how Lupin kind of got the lean in the previous episodes, and I think it felt like mostly like the other ones did, where Pato was like the primary of this episode, but Lupin didn't feel like they were just making cameos. In a way, I felt their role seemed slightly less, but I think that was just because I was so focused on, oh, we're finally getting a Pato-focused episode. But so I would say it's more or less even in terms of I didn't feel like they were just, you know, a side character at a restaurant. And they had, like, significant parts in terms of what they did in the episode, which I'll get to. But yeah, it was more Patranger focused. And I would say that I didn't find their focus to be as intriguing as Lupin's, because like inherently, as far as we know, like their story isn't as personal. So like with the Lupinranger focus, we found out more about them overall and like what their motives are as a team, and then like last week we found specifically about Lupin Blue's motives, and this week wasn't so much about finding out a huge amount of backstory as it was finding out a little bit about the characters' personalities. Like, we did get a flashback of, like, we know that Ichigo, it's like Kijiro or Kentaro or Kanto Bite. I know that Pink's name is Tsukasa, but I'm just still gonna call him by the Ranger name, so I'm terrible with names. It's not even funny. Anyway, but we find out that Ichigo and Sango, or Tsukasa, I think it's Tsukasa, whatever, I don't care, were, you know, at the academy together, which is something that might have already been brought up. But, like, that's the extent of flashback we got, you know, was we were at the academy, he's always been kind of a little bit of a hot-headed, focused cop, and then, you know, it leads to this sort of nice character moment at the end where he, like, always knew that she has this secret, like, overly excited side about cute stuff. And it's funny because I remember the description, like the character descriptions, that her character like put on this serious facade to sort of take her work seriously, but she secretly will get excited about stuff. And I was kind of wondering when that was going to happen from the beginning of the series, since we haven't got a lot of focus on them. But then I almost forgot about it when this episode came up, because honestly, my theory was that the people were becoming the stuffed animals, because when they showed up at that vendor's thing, they were all wearing the same outfit, and the one they took from the crime scene was wearing a different outfit, and I was like, oh, people are becoming the stuffed animals, and I'm like, she's gonna figure that out, but then she was like, kawaii, and then she got trapped. So it wasn't as intriguing, but I think it was a nice character moment for us learning something about her, and then like learning, you know, that Red knew her better than she thought. Like, it was just kind of nice stuff for the team dynamics. Nothing amazing, but I do want to point out something that sort of annoys me that I want to point out, because I'm not usually a compare Super Sentai to Power Rangers person, because I'm not of the, oh my god, Super Sentai so much more the pure Japanese mature material, because I hate those people. But I just wanted to bring out that this is the type of stuff that Power Rangers is missing right now. Not the, oh my god, they showed blood or stood next to beer, they're so more mature. Is these subtle little character moments. Like, this was a really small scale thing. In the grand scheme of the larger story, or even us learning about Lupin Blue's backstory. But this was a small little set of details that told us more about these characters personally. We learned about them, was a little bit development of who they are as characters, both as individuals and their personal relationship. We never get any of that in modern day PR. All we get is, oh, let me learn a lesson that's really archaic and can't be really applied in the real world. So I just wanted to point that out, because I really appreciated that, because it wasn't, again, a huge thing, but I like little stuff like that. Would I have liked to learn more a little bit in depth about them personally? Sure, but I'm sure we'll get to that. And I thought it was at least a nice little bit of a different approach to learning a little bit more about them. I kind of liked the vibe of sort of an investigation feel the Patrangers plot had. I kind of wish it had been like this, or future episodes will be a little bit more of an investigation where it's more prevalent and it keeps you guessing a little bit, because even though there was an investigation a little bit after they found out who it was, the episode started, I'm like, oh cool, it's gonna kind of be a detective story. And then they like immediately found who it was because they interrogated this dude and the Lupinrangers already knew who he was. Speaking of, like, the Lupinrangers did take a back seat, but like they already like out-detective the Patrangers by finding out who the dude was first. And then like when they were in the mecha battle at the end, they like, when the Patrangers got in a tight spot, they like helped him out in his individual mech, and Lupin Kaiser's like, whoa, I'm Team Lupin, and they went Lupin Kaiser and destroyed him. And there was a really neat story beat where when the Lupinrangers took off during the first encounter, the Lupin Yellow sort of gave them a little tidbit of information they knew about the case, and as such later Tsukasa sort of let Lupin Yellow take the Lupin collection item. I thought that was a nice moment of developing a little bit of rapport. Again, like, until the finale days, I don't want to see these two become one unit, but I like the idea of them being helpful later on, and like the idea of both Lupin Yellow and Sango realizing, you know, that either side isn't bad and sort of assisting each other, but then obviously you have stuff like Ichigo being more antagonistic. I just think it keeps things interesting, and it was kind of a nice character beat for both of them to show, you know, the Lupinrangers aren't just solely out for themselves. Like, even when they were fighting him and the monster was like, oh, if you destroy me, you'll never know who the victims are. Like, you could see the Lupinrangers visibly standing down. So I thought it was a nice character beat for them and nice development for their interactions, and was overall cool. As far as the winner of the episode, in a way, I almost wanted to give it to Lupin, just because they out-detectived the Patrangers and they out-mecha battled them, but I have to give it to Team Patrangers this week, just because I feel bad that they haven't gotten as much focus this early in the run, and I do genuinely like them. Like, none of them's done anything to upset me. I like their actors, I like their personalities, and I enjoyed this episode and like the little quirk that Tsukasa had and the interactions with them. So even though in a lot of ways the Lupinrangers kind of stole the show professionally, I'm not like a pity vote, but I gotta give it to the Patrangers. It was the first real focus episode, and it was a solid one. Last side note is, I would love to see future stuff like that, where this episode, obviously, it was a good striker, like, changing sides, but of one side having a mecha battle and the other providing some sort of support in the individuals, and then it just staying like that. Like, even it could be like the battles we see on the ground, where they're both fighting the monster, but also fighting each other. I would kind of like to see something like that, where you have, like, Lupin Kaiser fighting the monster, but then you have the trigger machines fighting the monster and Pat Kaiser. Like, that could be kind of cool. I also wouldn't mind seeing ground or Megazord battles that don't involve both teams. Like, you know, this episode, the Lupinrangers showed up to both Patranger fights, and I'd love to see future fights where just one team is fighting. But that's just kind of random stuff for the show in general and not this episode. But overall, I thought this was a solid first sort of more status quo episode. I would give it an 8. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Dawson Ryder, signing out.